you have that mindset where you believe in yourself and you believe in your capabilities, even when you're backed into a corner, you will always come out fighting. And just because you cannot physically see your mind doesn't mean that you should not train it.
Hi there, and welcome back to another powerful episode of Your Mind in Sport. My name is Gary Lavery. I'm a certified trainer of NLP, a sports mindset coach, and sports psychologist. In this episode, I will be covering off attitude and sharing with you some brilliant examples from sports performers worldwide, and sharing with you 3 top tips to help you break through barriers from negativity into positivity. So why is your attitude in sport crucial? Well, let's explore right now. When I've been in the presence of talking with top athletes, one characteristic that really stands out is their ability to think positively, even when injured or during tough times. The ability to see a silver lining in every cloud and what appears to be a negative experience into a positive. And this helps them to succeed time and time again. My first example is from former England football manager Sven-Göran Eriksson. And he selected his players not just around their physical skills, but also their mental characteristics. Eriksson believed whether a player has a positive attitude or not is a key issue. In the book Mind Games, Eriksson spoke about having the right attitude. He said, to join the England team, you must have a positive attitude and you must believe that you can go to Germany and win. If they don't believe we can do it, then it's impossible. We will never win. You must have that positive attitude for everything you do in the team. Some mornings you wake up and life is difficult. It's raining and it's windy. But you must have a positive attitude anyhow. If you have 1 or 2 negative players, the next morning there will be 4 or 5 of them. Negativity spreads like cancer. Another example of attitude in relation to winning comes from outside of the sporting world and on the battlefield. One of my favourite stories about winning an attitude comes from the book Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. And inside this classic, there is a metaphor story based around the desire and the attitude of winning. It reads, a long while ago, a great warrior faced the situation which made it necessary for him to make a decision which ensured his success on the battlefield. He was about to send his armies against a powerful foe, whose men outnumbered his own. He loaded his soldiers into boats and sailed to the enemy's country, unloaded soldiers and equipment, then gave them the order to burn the ships that had carried them. Addressing his men before the first battle, he said, "You see the boats going up in smoke. That means we cannot leave these shores alive unless we win. We now have no choice. We win or we perish." And they won. Every person who wins in any undertaking must be willing to burn their ships and cut all sources of retreat. Only by doing so can you be sure of maintaining that state of mind known as a burning desire to win, which is essential to success. I personally believe that is a really good, strong example of putting everything on the line so that the team know exactly what they need to do to win the battle. Now, in reality, burning the ships is probably out of the question for ourselves. But when we think about it, what would you sacrifice that would enable you that extra 1 or 2% motivation that would allow you to push as hard as what you can and win the game right in front of you? Because that is something that you need to consider that would drive that extra energy, effort and focus towards winning what you want to achieve. Another great example of attitude comes from former New Zealand and All Blacks rugby captain Sean Fitzpatrick, who wrote in his book Winning Matters, "My coach once told me that it didn't matter what level of talent had been given to us, what size we were, or how fast or slow we ran. It was what we did with the talent that had really, really counted." Meaning, no excuses, no exceptions. His coach also said, "The only thing that I want you to be is the best you can possibly be." And if that's not enough to define why your attitude in sport is crucial, in the book, They Did You Can, it gives an example of attitude from former South African cricketer Eric Simons. And Simons says, "Attitude is everything. This means not letting things get us down or put us off. It means not making excuses, but instead accepting responsibility for where you are and what you have done when things don't go your way. In other words, not putting your head in the sand and pretending things are fine when really they are not." He also said, "You can put a limit on a cricketer with talent, but you can never put a limit on a cricketer with guts and the right mental attitude." Ask any high-performing athlete and they'll tell you this: making it to the top is hard, but staying there is even harder. Usain Bolt once said, "Top athletes make more mistakes and suffer more setbacks than the talented athletes. They push themselves harder. They often step outside their comfort zone because they know that is where the real challenge is." So with that comment from Usain Bolt, and also what we spoke about earlier with reference to burning the ships, what specifically is keeping you in your comfort zone? That if you push that to one side and made one big sacrifice, like burning your ships, would take you into either the learning zone where you would need to learn something from an experience, or if you're the type of character that strives to go even harder and put you into that zone of stretch, what is the one thing that would really fire your motivation and create that burning desire within yourself? And to be honest, I could absolutely go on for days and tell you about why your attitude in sport is absolutely crucial, because there are so many impossibility success stories around the world. Think about Michael Jordan, one of the world's most accomplished basketball players, didn't make his high school basketball team. Now just imagine if Michael Jordan never believed that he could achieve getting into the basketball team, and if he kind of had the attitude of "it's just not possible," we might not have seen one of the all-time great basketball players. But my final example is that of one of my all-time favourite athletes, and that is Lance Armstrong. Now, in 1996, Lance Armstrong was diagnosed with testicular cancer, and doctors told him that he had a 10% chance of survival. But Lance Armstrong not only survived cancer, but he then went on to win 7 consecutive Tour de France titles. Now, I personally think those last 2 examples are absolutely down to that ultimate attitude of getting out of a comfort zone, pushing yourself forward, not really listening to what people are saying to you, but only you out of your own mindset pushing you to where you want to be. So let's just move on and look at what are attitudes. Well, from an NLP perspective, attitudes are merely a collection of values and beliefs around a certain situation. Now, if you've heard the previous episodes of Your Mind in Sport, in episode 1, we covered off values, and in episode 2, we covered off beliefs. And if you're pretty much new to Your Mind in Sport podcasts, it would be fantastic if you can go back and listen to episodes 1 and 2 just to give you a really good solid grounding of what we mean by values and beliefs. Now, we are usually quite conscious of our attitudes, right? Either positive or negative. And often we sometimes tell people something like this: well, that's just the way I feel about that. And when you think about those particular words, it kind of gives off an impression that it is negative or positive. Have you ever tried to change someone's attitude? Because from an NLP perspective, it's far easier to change values and beliefs because of their level of abstraction. In other words, going back to the root cause of the problem. And when we go back to this, it opens up many opportunities to develop new values and install new beliefs, which will then help that person create a much positive attitude going forward. Have you ever done something and thought afterwards, how could I? That was absolutely stupid. But conversely, have you ever done something that you thought, wow, that was amazing. How on earth did I pull that off? I'm really impressed with myself. Now, what determines the difference between acting badly or brilliantly? Rarely, it is based on solely your ability and attitude. Instead, it's the state of mind in any given situation that shapes the way you think, feel, behave, and perform. If you know the secret of accessing your most powerful positive attitude and emotional states, you can literally work wonders. Being in the right frame of mind with a positive attitude, with great ideas and strong abilities, will absolutely 100% flow in a seemingly effortless fashion. And my question is, what can you accomplish if you lived with a positive attitude and were able to access your best emotional states every day? So let's look at how you can adapt your attitude with these top 3 tips. Tip number 1 is surround yourself with positive people. And when you think about the example at the start of this podcast by Sven-Göran Eriksson about selecting the right people with the right attitude, former Barcelona manager and current Manchester City manager Pep Guardiola gives an absolutely brilliant example of how he builds a culture involving positive people. And the example I wish to give is from the book The Barcelona Way by Damon Hughes. And inside the book it says the following: the game was forgotten, the lesson was not. There was a golden chance for Barcelona to score the first goal of the game. The quickly taken shot flashed past the goalkeeper's desperate dive, past the post, and missed by inches. And before the crowd had the opportunity to process the events and react accordingly, Pep Guardiola, in his first season in charge of FC Barcelona, immediately turned round to look at his bench. He wanted to take a mental snapshot of the players that had not been selected. He wished to observe their reaction to the incident that had just occurred. Some players leapt from their seats in anticipation of the ball nestling in the back of the net before holding their heads in shared frustration that their team had not taken the lead. Other players neither moved nor reacted to the events, appearing to be uninterested in what had passed before their eyes. The following summer, all those players who had failed to react had left the club. I believe that's a great example of leadership. And from an NLP perspective, we would class that example as something called modelling. Learning from the best. Success leaves clues. And if we just keep remembering that success leaves clues, it kind of opens our mind first of all, but it also opens our eyes as well, so that we can absorb anything that we see that would be very, very useful to ourselves going forward. Whether we are a manager, coach, or player, there's always something to learn from the very best. But maybe you are an athlete who is involved within a team. And within that team, there will be a specific culture. And two things that really do spring to mind to create that good, solid, positive culture is the word trust and also support. And in my opinion, I believe that within a team environment, there are two levels of trust. The first one is self-trust and the other is relationship trust. And what I mean by self-trust is actually dealing with the confidence we have in ourselves. So, for example, in our ability to set and achieve goals, to keep commitments, to be walking the talk, and also with our ability to inspire trust in others. Because at the end of the day, it's a team game. And if we are one of the influential players or coaches within that setup, then we can actually work wonders with those people who are often on the negative side of positive thinking, but also if they have little trust in themselves. And just by having that open conversation, whereby you can understand exactly the reasons why they behave in a certain way, can actually make that person realise. And you might be one of those people right now who have a little bit of lack of trust within yourself. So is there anybody around you who you can maybe call or meet face to face just to have that open and honest conversation to really get you moving forward? And the second part of trust is the relationship trust. And this is about how we establish and increase the trust accounts that we have with others. So within any team, you would have a different level of trust with each particular player or coach or manager. And over time, this trust will either be built up, just like a bank account where we put deposits in and the bank account grows, or we actually withdraw money and the bank account actually decreases. So if you think about the putting money in as growing the emotional bank account, and then also when we withdraw money, it's actually decreasing the amount of trust that we have with that person. And the net result here is basically significantly to increase your ability to generate trust with all involved in order to enhance relationships and achieve better results. The other part that I mentioned earlier on was about support. So if the trust is right, then you would go to that person who you trust the most, because you know that you can have an open and honest conversation that's going to make you feel really better going forward. Tip number 2 is focus on the things you can control. Now, with regards to this tip, the exercise that I want you to do is you have two options. You can either grab a piece of A4 paper and actually draw what I say, or you can just imagine from mind what I'm saying. If you want to draw the exercise, then please start off by drawing a big circle on the A4 piece of paper, and let's call this your circle of concern. And if you can write the word circle of concern at the top of that circle, just inside it. Now imagine this big circle with a small circle inside, and let's call this your circle of influence. And if you could just draw a smaller circle inside of the big circle, and again, write the word circle of concern at the top of that circle. People are concerned about many things. Now, there's two types of people, reactive people and proactive people. Reactive people tend to try to change all of these things. And this happens when we stay in our circle of concern. And it can result in a lot of wasted energy because we can only influence a small number of things we're concerned about. Proactive people, on the other hand, will focus on the things that they can influence by moving into their circle of influence. And this can result in real positive change with regards to attitude and performance. The thing most within our influence is our own attitude and behaviour. And this should always be our starting point, because the reactive focus means staying inside your circle of concern and focusing your energy on the things you can't do much about, which is frustrating and doesn't maximise your time, energy, or focus. The proactive focus means moving your circle of influence and focusing your energy and working on the things you can do something about, which is more empowering and confidence building. The proactive approach can help you to expand your circle of influence and shrink your circle of concern. Now, on that piece of A4 paper, if you were to draw arrows coming from the small circle inside and actually pointing outwards, and that's what we mean by expanding your circle of influence. Now, one of the most common phrases used in sports psychology nowadays is control the controllables. So basically, as an athlete or a sports performer, it is important to focus on the elements of the game you can control and not give much attention to those you cannot control. So think about what we've just said about the circle of concern and circle of influence. Circle of concern is all the things that you cannot control, and circle of influence is all the things you can control. So what I want to do now is just give you some real specific examples around the things that we cannot control and the things that we can control. Now, for the people with the pen and paper, it would be great if you can just write the words what I say inside the relevant circle. And for those people who are just using their mindset and listening, then please listen up. So some of the elements that are out of an athlete or sports performer's control would include things like past and future events, the weather, such as the temperature, is it raining, snowing, field, track, court, or water conditions. Obviously, water conditions if you are a swimmer. Is the water too warm? Is it too cold? Opponents, giving you verbals, or more commonly known, sledging. The players who play for the opposition, are they world class? Are they low class? Performances, have they had a string of winning performances leading up to the game, or have they had performances where they haven't been doing as well as what they can do leading up to the game? Officials making decisions and crowd behaviour. And they are the things that are kind of out of our control that we may have a little bit of influence upon. So the events that are within an athlete or sports performer's control would be such as the amount of effort that we put in, a response to a situation that maybe didn't go our way, self-talk, motivation, energy, relaxation, and focus. But however, knowing what aspects require your focus and what aspects you can ignore can be lost in the heat of competition. Because you know, like I know, that when we're involved in a pressure situation, if we don't think from the inside before we make that decision outside, and it could be an absolute split-second decision, then things might not go our way. But the good news is that our behaviour is governed from the inside out, and you get to choose how you respond to any of those situations. Now, as a follow-up from hearing what I've just previously said, I think it would be really good just to kind of evaluate where you are with the things that you can't control. And maybe there is one or two things on that list where you would need to do a little bit more inner work so that if you were faced with that situation in the future, you would respond more positively. But it's not just about the things that you cannot control that you need to do work within your own mindset. It's also the things that you have control over. And also on that list of elements that you have control over, where on that list do you need to turn the performance and behaviour dial up that would get you a better performance going forward? Because that is absolutely important. It's essential that you identify where your strengths are, but also where your development areas are. Because the things that you can control, in my opinion, are absolutely more important than the things that you cannot control. with the things you can control, you have the choice of doing something to improve them. Hope that makes sense. And the final tip, tip number 3, is challenge your negative thoughts. Your mind will tell you how good you are. Olympic gold medalist and world champion hurdler Sally Gunnell once said, "Negative thoughts lead to negative performance. The connection is as straightforward as that. The solution is to focus on the race. And this means, firstly, to keep the concentration as unbroken as possible. And secondly, to try and change any negative thoughts into positive ones." From NLP perspective, Richard Bandler, the co-creator of NLP, he used to often say to his clients, "Who is driving your bus?" Actually meaning, who is in charge of your mind? Is it you or is it somebody else? Now, from a sports perspective, someone else could also refer to the situation or scenario that you're involved in. And this could be a particular ground or a particular venue or a particular course that you haven't played well at in the past. And if you were to think about those situations right now, what would you be saying inside your mind about that particular venue or course that could possibly hinder a future performance? Former Australian opening batsman Justin Langer once said, "If I want to give myself the best chance of success in anything I do, I have to talk to myself as a great caddy, coach or teacher would talk to me. Even when I was under pressure, I had to find the discipline to talk to myself as the best coach in the world would talk to me. And it's no different from anyone else." So as you've just there heard, the internal dialogue, the internal self-talk needs to be absolutely precise and positive. But it's not just the internal world that we need to consider, it's also the outside world. And when people or the opposition look at us, what do they really see? And one of the key messages that comes out of NLP is this: you cannot not communicate. I want to say that again, please listen. You cannot not communicate. So even when you are not saying any words or using your vocabulary, you need to consider your body language. Because in sport, just like in any other areas of your life, body language conveys messages about confidence, commitment, motivation, and attitude. And when we see an athlete drop their head or demonstrate bodily signs of anxiety or frustration or anger, strong messages are given which can be extremely encouraging for the opponent. Former Australian cricketer and all-time legend Shane Warne clarified body language up with this: when people walk into the ground, they should always look at the scoreboard and not on the field to see which team is losing. So just before we start and close things down, I just want to go back to what I said previously about self-talk. Now look, in reality, changing self-talk is easier said than done. Of course it is. But doing this as a skill needs to be carefully considered and practiced. The key is to reframe and think differently about the situation that you face. So right now, I'm just going to rhyme off some examples that would give you an indication as to what negative self-talk might sound like. And then if we were to reframe that, what a positive self-talk message could be. And the first one is, I just can't get that mistake out of my mind. And that's maybe something that we've all experienced before. And more positive self-talk could sound like, give me another chance and I'll make up for it next time. Another statement of negative self-talk might be, that referee has probably cost us the game. And if we were to reframe that into more positive self-talk, it could sound like, right, we'll just have to win this without any help from the referee, but we can still win the game. And one final negative statement might sound like, I just can't seem to hit a decent shot today. And if you reframe that into positive, it could be something like, relax and focus on the target area. The shot will come. But the key to any negative self-talk is actually recognizing the trigger. when do you start and think about that negative self-talk or that negative thought that pops into your mind? And when that happens, it's really important that inside of your mind, you say the word stop. And this is also known from a sports psychologist's perspective as the mental slap. But when you say the word stop inside your mind, this sends a signal to the brain that something needs to happen quickly. And if you have that reframing positive message, then that will actually replace the negative self-talk that you once started with. But to actually achieve success, you need to keep saying it over and over and over again until you start and feel somewhat different. And just to reinforce what I said earlier, this is easier said than done, because this element of self-talk, reframing, it's actually a skill, but it's something that you can practice if you choose to do so. It's 100% in your control. But with that in mind, I think a really good call to action at this moment in time is for you to grab a piece of paper and just list all the negative self-talk, all the negative affirmations that you would say to yourself during a particular game within your sport, and then reframe whatever you come up with into a more positive statement or affirmation. And that's only half the battle. And the challenge then would be to actually make it so it becomes unconscious and you just do these statements naturally. And one of the key tips that I would love to recommend is for when you list all of those statements, affirmations on that piece of paper, is place it somewhere where you can actually see it. So maybe on a wall or maybe inside your bag. And that could be a bit of an action, bit of a mental warm-up to read through the affirmations before you actually go out and compete, either in training or in competition. So finally, let me just summarize those 3 all-important tips up. The first one is to surround yourself with positive people. The second one is to focus on the things you can control. And the third one is challenge your negative thoughts. And now, right now, you have an opportunity to develop the most important thing in your life ever. You'll still be able to do it your way, but only better. So what if you put those 3 tips into action? What would that get for you in the future? And also, how would your relationships improve with those people in your team? And also, how would you improve the relationship between your mind and your body? Some food for thought there, I'm sure. Hey, and that's it for another episode of Your Mind in Sport. Thank you very much for listening. I really hope that you've had your mind opened and you've got some value that you can take away and put into practice. If you've got any feedback, then please send that through to inquiries@nowtowow.co.uk. And if you are an individual sports performer looking for an opportunity to build that winning mindset, then you're only one call away. And that also applies to teams and organisations. And my number is 0191 300 0811. Let's have that chat today and let's get the wheels going and moving forward. So thank you very much for tuning in and have a great week. See you on the next podcast. Bye for now.